Hello and welcome to our conference podcast series, Power of Potential, sharing experiences from Universal Design for Learning journeys. So I'd firstly like to welcome our listeners. This podcast is being recorded on Teams, on a call via Teams, and we have got Susie, Betsy and Linda with us, who are all in different places across the world. So it's a really international podcast today, and I'm Kirsty and I'm in Worcester at the moment at the campus at Worcester City, and this podcast is focusing on our upcoming conference that we have. So firstly, I would like to hand over to Susie, Betsy and Linda to just introduce themselves and say perhaps where they are today or what setting they might be linked to, if they are linked to a setting.
Susie, you
So
go.
it is morning for me, and I'm Susie Gronseth. I am in Houston, Texas, in the U.S., and I am a clinical professor at the University of Houston in the Learning Design and Technology program area within the Department of Curriculum and Instruction at the College of Education. And here in Houston, we just had a massive storm come through that has knocked out the power for about 1 million people, including us. We're on backup power right now. The internet is down, but I'm on my mobile hotspot. And so that's the wonder of redundancy in technology, I suppose. At the University of Houston, I teach courses in instructional design. I do research in how we can use technology to expand learning opportunities and how we can use it in other ways to address food insecurity. And I do research in those spaces. I also serve in the capacity of the president of our faculty senate. We have around 1,700 full-time faculty, 3,000 if you include our part-time adjunct faculty. And so it's given me a broader understanding of, how we can support education at the university level. The University of Houston has around 50,000 students. We're just under that. So we're a pretty large institution. And I'll stop there and pass it over to Betsy.
Okay. I'm Betsy Dalton. I'm not in a different country than Susie, but a whole different area. I live in Rhode Island, which is on the east coast of the US. And I don't do any of the stuff that Susie does right now because I am retired from full-time work. I worked for I've been in the field of special education for about 45 years. I still work as a consultant, but I worked at the primary, the secondary, the post-secondary, and the adult education levels of special education. And I am connected with Universal Design for Learning because I had the opportunity to have a wonderful postdoctoral fellowship with CAST, who really came up with the framework of Universal Design for Learning. So I've been working with that since about 2005. And right now I do a lot of work online, a lot of curriculum development and consultation with some other specific countries around the world. And also quite a bit of writing, and we'll be talking more about that as we go along. Okay, Linda.
Thank you so much. I'm just sitting here being so flattered because you, Kirsty, asked if we were at the same place, and I'm not. And I am so flattered that I could go for an English native speaker. I don't know. That was so funny because I'm from Sweden, and you probably hear that. But I have a PhD, so I am a lecturer in special education at Kristianstad University, which is a university in the southern of Sweden. And I teach special needs educator programs. And I also teach, university teachers in higher education courses. And most of my focus in my teaching is about accessibility learning. It's about students with NDD, and it is with the teacher-student relationship. And I also came in contact with the UDL for a lot of years from now, when I started working at the university, I think in 2014 or something like that. And I was asking for funding from my university to go to CAST to learn more. So I went to CAST, and I went to forgot the name. Please help me. The famous university. The famous university. Harvard University. Thank you. So I went to Harvard University, and I went to CAST to learn more. And when I was there, I met David, now of course Richard Jackson. Wrong name, Richard Jackson. And that is actually my connection to Betsy and Susie also, because I'm involved in the Include network, where Betsy also is in. Betsy is in the steering committee, but Betsy and I are working together in that community a lot. So that's my connection to UDL.
Brilliant. Can I just thank you all for being here? What a rich wealth of experience and different perspectives we've got just on this call today. So you've been invited to come and chat to me today, and I'm curious as to what's led you here today to be involved in this podcast for the upcoming conference. Can I pass that over to Susie, if that's okay?
Sure. So we're really excited about the upcoming conference. Just the opportunity to get together is precious. And I am so just filled up every time that I get around these wonderful people. And I know of other really great colleagues that are going to be there. So I would recommend anybody that is kind of on the fence of whether to go. It's going to be a worthwhile event. The session that we're going to talk about, that we're together on, we're presenting a number of different things at the conference, but the one that we're going to talk about is related to several edited books that we have been editors of the past couple of years. And I'll speak of one, and then I can pass it over to Betsy and Linda. So Betsy and I did a book that came out in 2020, and it's called Universal Access Through Inclusive Instructional Design, International Perspectives on UDL. And that came out of some pre-work that we had been doing with the International Society for Technology and Education and the Society for Information Technology and Teacher Education site, and discussing not only universal design for learning, but ways that people around the world are thinking very strategically about supporting all learners, about building educational programming and classroom environments that that reduce inherent barriers. Instead of just when a learner experiences a barrier to accommodate, right? So to think about the things in our design that are creating those barriers that could be more flexible. And universal design for learning certainly speaks to that, but there are actually quite a number of frameworks and models and approaches that educators have developed around the world, but they are very localized and until that point had not been gathered into any sort of scholarly resource that could share that information out. So that was what that book attempted to do. We had 47 chapters at the end of it, so we're not able to, say that this is the entire corpus of literature on this, but it was definitely a start. And it really was enlightening to bring forward voices from different parts of the world, and some that will be at the conference that we've developed relationships with a lot of these experts and since the book, and so they're part of some of these events moving forward. So that's what that book is about. And what I would stress is that yes, we certainly support universal design for learning, but do want to acknowledge other kinds of frameworks that have been developed that have some overlap with UDL, but then there are some distinct considerations and affordances that are unique to different settings depending on their priorities, cultural perspectives, resources, and so on.
Mm-hmm.
That's fascinating, and I think listeners might hear from other podcasts is people have been talking about UDL as kind of primarily as a way of being or an ethos, but actually it goes much wider than that, and that's one framework in an array of frameworks that might exist depending on where you are in the world or the type of setting. And so I think it's really interesting to hear the different perspectives on that and the richness. And it sounds like, with 47 chapters, my goodness, there's going to be so much information that's all been put in one place for anybody that wants to kind of explore that further. So thank you, Susie. And Betsy, Betsy and Linda, did you want to talk about the other bits of writing or the other books? Can I pass over to Betsy or Linda?
Mm-hmm. I'd be happy to. Is that okay if I go, Linda?
Absolutely.
Okay, so in my introduction, I talked a little bit about being involved with special education for so many years. And but before that, I was going to go into the sciences. So I've always been intrigued by the scientific approach, and that really brought me to look at technology access as a special educator and get involved with assistive technology. And it's really through looking at technology and the capacity that technology has to reduce barriers for individuals who have differing needs that that has brought me to the Universal Design for Learning framework, because the connection between technology and UDL is something that's talked about quite a bit. It's not mandatory that technologies are used for Universal Design for Learning, but it is really, really helpful. So that's kind of my path and what brought me to get involved with professional organizations as well as connect with, and that's where I met Susie. And so through that, we started thinking about the impact of Universal Design for Learning around the world. That brought about the first book. And then these other two books were actually sparked by our colleague and friend Shigeru Ikuta, who is from Japan. And he invited both Linda and myself to work on these books because he knew that Susie and I had done one of the books and or had done an international book on inclusive instructional design and universal design for learning. So these other two books, which just came out in 2023, one is called Building Inclusive Education in K through 12 Classrooms and Higher Education, Theories and Principles. And then the second one is called Developing Inclusive Environments in Education, global practices and curricula. And the reason we have 2 books is because when we started going out and gathering proposals for manuscripts, there were so many proposals that if we put it in 1 book, it would have been like 500 pages long. So we came up with the concept of breaking it into 2 books. And these books are available as ebooks, primarily as ebooks. You can get them as a printed book, but they seem to be much more accessible and popular as electronic books. And also, it's easier to get them that way as well. And so we'll be talking about the content of those. And by their their titles, you can see that it's not only UDL in there either. It's really talking about inclusion, inclusive education, inclusive environments, and what those environments are based on, and then how to build curricula to enhance those environments. So that was an introduction. Linda?
Yeah, no, I think you did it very, very well, Betsy. But I also thought about what you said, because the books are more than universal design for learning. It is more of inclusive education in full, and how to perceive teaching and learning, because in a way, UDL, we can talk as a framework, but first and foremost, I think it's a way of perceiving teaching and learning, and how we perceive ourselves as teachers, and how we make the learning accessible for our students. And that is really important, and not only based on the books, but also based on most discussion, especially in my country, where we talk about, we have a very long era of being quite good at, as we all think ourselves, in inclusive education, and how we make learning accessible for everyone. But the thing we have been good at is, what are we going to do? We know what we are going to do. We are going to make learning accessible for all, and we know why we are going to do that, based on all our international statement and so on, and for the right of the child and so on. But we haven't been that good on explaining how to really make it happen in practice. And that is something that you and me, Betsy, has talked very much about, the how of learning. How do we create an accessible learning environment in reality in the classrooms? And there is where these books are something that we are very proud of, and we really think that could be a good contribution to this discussion.
And just to add to a small bit to that point, I know both Susie and Linda, and well, we've all talked about the importance of contextualizing these concepts, contextualizing UDL, and especially when you're working with individuals from very, very different cultural backgrounds, economic backgrounds, just societal backgrounds. You can't take a structured framework and just kind of plop it down someplace and say, here you go, here it is, here's that magic framework. It's important to do the groundwork as to what are the needs, what's the situation, what are the questions, what are the barriers, and then to build upon that as to whatever your training is going to be, whatever the resources are going to be that you're going to be recommending or helping them to find within their country as well. So those are the types of questions that I've been fascinated by for many, many years, and trying to work towards through these books and through other types of things. Yep.
Thank you, everybody, for that contribution, and Betsy, absolutely, that contextualization of what inclusive looks like in different settings and different cultures is absolutely key. I can hear that coming through loud and clear. And I think going back to some of the questions that we've asked all of our podcast guests, although I am going to broaden these because I'm also hearing that it's not just about UDL as well. So I'm going to sort of shift the language a bit. And again, that might be my cultural shift. So apologies if I'm not using the correct terminology. But I'd like to ask why you think inclusion is so important in teaching and learning, and what that looks like. So quite open questions, but just thinking for our listeners who perhaps are not experts yet in the field and they're really interested in understanding that contextualization. What is it, and why is it so important, that inclusivity? Who would like to start with that?
I think it should go to Susie. She's next.
Susie.
Sure, I'd be happy to, but I know, some of the work that Linda's been doing would speak really well to this point. So, from my perspective, I see universal design for learning and similar kinds of frameworks as instructional design theory. And that it's a communication tool. It's a way to guide us as designers, planners of instruction and programming, to be very mindful of constraints that we might be implicitly or explicitly, putting in for different reasons. Maybe it's, just that's the way we've always done it, or time constraints, I think universal design for learning really prompts us to be creative, imaginative, to re-envision activities in different ways, or how people can demonstrate that they have developed the competencies, the target competencies in different ways, and it might be a quote non-traditional way to assess those, but it may be actually more authentic when you do that re-envisioning. So for me, it really helps the design to be more robust, more thoughtful, inclusive, in that it might have started with specific considerations for individuals with disabilities or other kinds of barriers, but it becomes more inclusive and supportive for all learners, because we all have varied needs. I have bandwidth needs right now. I just switched over to my phone. And so it's nice to have, these different options and ways to access this kind of, intellectual engagement right now. And I think that, if I can take a step back when I'm planning to say, where can I open it up? Where can I provide more flexibility, more resources, so that learners could have options to navigate and select the pathway that's going to help them be successful? That's going to make a better design.
And that whole idea of the development of universal design for learning into thinking about it as a theory happens to be another topic that Susie and I are going to be presenting at the conference. So if people are interested in that, we'd love to see you there. But Linda, Susie mentioned about the work that you do, directly with teachers and who are working directly with students. Maybe this would fit in well here, that the audience would like to hear from you.
Yes, as a teacher educator, I work with students at our university, but I also work with municipalities, and I have worked with different municipalities for many years, where we have worked with implementing universal design for learning in practice. And Susie kind of no, it was you, Betsy, I think, kind of mentioned that earlier, that universal design for learning, we said it's more of a vision of how to perceive teaching and learning. And that concept in all is kind of global or universal, or whatever you like to say, but there are contextual differences, and that was something that we became very aware of when I and Susie and Betsy and Sujata, a professor from India, wrote a chapter where we described our implementation journeys of implementing universal design for learning. So I described a 2-year-long project where I have been an assistant professor in the municipality to work in practice with those, much by collegial learning, and how we like build bridges between the academic world and, you know, all the UDL as a framework and their practice, and how it went very well and was they could see it in students' results, for an example, and that was very interesting. And then on the other hand, Sujata did with the help of Betsy and Susie, did a project, and you have to help me here. It was students at the university, wasn't it? Yeah, but the thing that we saw that. Yes, teacher. But the thing that we, thing that we saw, that there are many things that are universal, right? In the implementation, there are many things that are similar, but there are contextual differences as well. And we came very well aware of that. For an example, in Sweden, we have really much technology in schools, and every student have their own devices of so many, you know, computers and everything they need. So that is an issue, but that's not the biggest issue when implementing UDL here in that municipality. It was much more about the relationship and how to connect between teacher and student, and to motivate and engage. So as you said earlier, Susie, we talk about UDL, but we broaden it up and in somehow we make it looks different based on the context we're working with. You know, if we work where we don't have much technology, maybe that is something that we focus very much on. In another country, we have much technology, and there is other things that we need to focus on.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Linda. That's fascinating to hear all of that, and I really like this idea of kind of building the bridges. It was a really good metaphor there for that, and thinking about the different aspects that we might focus on, and the freedom and curiosity within the framework to do that. So I could talk for hours and listen to you talking for hours about this. It's fascinating, but I'm just aware that we do all have busy days ahead. So I would like to ask one final question to each of you, if that's okay. Forgive me for sort of bringing it towards a close. What are your hopes for the future for inclusion or UDL? That's my question. What do you hope for the future? And I'm going to go to Susie first, if that's okay.
My hopes for the future. That's a tough question. I'd love to hear what the others. I'll have to check out the other podcasts to see what other people have to say. I hope that we will continue to have conversations about this,
that we will continue to support the plurality of viewpoints on this, that we will be, cognizant of the things that we're being pulled in many directions, the limitations on resources, the challenges that individuals that are involved in education are part of, the concerns about scaling up these kinds of ideas. I just would hope that we would continue to grapple with those hard questions, to look critically at universal design for learning and other inclusive frameworks in ways that really are going to help us identify productive, sustainable solutions to supportive education. That's what I would hope. And I think that, these kinds of convenings, like the conference that's coming up, and the coming together in projects like these books, are ways that we can bring together that collective. And that's really important, because we can't do this in silos. We can't address these kinds of issues individually. We need to come together. So that's what I would hope. But it is challenging, because we when we do that, we find where our limitations are and where we have room for growth. So it's humbling, it's challenging, it's tiring work, but I would hope that we would continue to work towards that.
Thank you, Susie. Can I offer the same question then? What are your hopes for the future in terms of inclusion or UDL, to Betsy or Linda? I'm not sure who would like to go first.
I'll follow up. I'm going to be brief.
Okay, Betsy. Yeah.
I have lots of hopes, but I'll talk about one which really relates to the field of education. I hope that we can find more ways to do really well-designed research and accepted research, and think about research outcomes in a broad enough way so that the impact of inclusive education and universal design for learning can really be documented and better understood. I think that would help to be able to spread these models, these ideas in a real way throughout education. And we do hope that we'll be able to expand on that idea through the conference and getting people together and having discussions about that.
Wonderful, thank you, Betsy. And last but not least, Linda, what are your hopes for the future of UDL or inclusion, or however you'd like to think about it?
Yeah, thank you. And I'm going to be even shorter than you, Betsy, because you actually said what I was going to say.
Because we're working together on a project.
Yeah. So I just say that I don't need to say more, I think, but I think it's a really important work that we are doing, and I am so much looking forward to meet all these really competent and professional academics that I will meet on this conference, and I look really forward to go on with our project. At the end of the day, it's for the students in school we are doing this, and I think that is for them that we are so engaged in this as we are. And as I can say, I have worked many years with students with ADHD and autism, and I can see how UDL is really making them thrive. Just when you can see that you can differentiate the not only the learning, but also how you organize the education, so it will be accessible for them. And it's something that I have seen happen in practice, and that's why I truly believe that this is the way we need to go.
Thank you, Linda, so much. And can I just thank you all for sharing your time with us? It's very precious, and your knowledge and understanding is wonderful to listen to. And we're very lucky to have you all on this podcast today. So thank you so much. Is there anything else you wanted to add before we go about the rest of our days all over the world, wherever we are?
Just thank you so much, and we hope we'll see you at the conference.
I won't be at the conference. I'm going to be in Luxembourg in a field, but
we hope we'll see the people who are listening to this podcast.
I think there'll be loads of listeners at the conference, and I also know that these podcasts are going to be used wider than that. So again, thank you so much, and enjoy the rest of your day, and stay safe in the extreme weather, Susie. I hope your generator lasts and everyone's safe. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank
The
you.
challenge of his life. Thanks a lot.